Hello, hello. Hey there, hey there. Welcome into another edition of Between the Lines. I'm Josh Ellis, editor-in-chief of Success Magazine, and we're running down the November-December issue of Success on newsstands and wherever you get your magazines today. We're talking about this piece by Michael Mooney, my guest today. Michael, thanks for stopping by. You wrote about Steve Jobs. It's called Think Differently. That's the headline. Our newsstand date for this issue happens to be the 10-year anniversary. I can't believe it's been this long since Steve Jobs died. Does it strike you that like time has flown by? Because so many of the things that he put in place at Apple and Pixar are only continuing to be, developed, and these business lines are so much of his vision is just now beginning to be seen.
That's right. I actually think we're probably able to see a little bit more the level of kind of the effect that Steve Jobs has had on our society more now than we probably could even 10 years ago. The iPhones were pretty ubiquitous 10 years ago, but nothing like they are now. Apple was the most valuable company in the world already, but they are really own the space that they're in, and virtually every space that they're in now. And I think, we've seen the spin-offs of technology develop even more rapidly than we did while he was alive. And of course, his effect crosses so many industries, from music to retail space to personal computing to cell phone technology. It's pretty incredible. And so in some ways, I can't believe it's 10 years. And in some ways, if you look at the technological timeline, it's surprising that it's only 10 years.
Right. We made, in honor of the anniversary, we made this issue the imagination issue of success. That's what we're calling it. And so your story in the November-December issue is really, it's about synthesizing some lessons from, Steve Jobs, the entrepreneur, and what all of us in whatever our line of work or whatever our business can take away from the way he worked and the way that he perceived things that weren't there yet. And to a certain extent, that's what all great entrepreneurs are able to do. They're able to, envision their product or their company solving a problem for people that people don't even realize they have necessarily. And so I want to go through a few of these, and one of them was just to imagine something more than money. Like his genius with the iPhone is he perceived a tool that would be, you use the word of ubiquitous. I mean, it's like the essential tool of our time. It's not just it's not like a laptop. It's everything, and it transcends whether we're work, play, romance, everything. It's essential for that.
Include how we eat, right? We get food delivered through this device.
Sure. And I think his genius is very much in that, like, it wasn't necessarily all about how to monetize that right from the start, but for the ways that it could be of service to people.
Yeah, from the very beginning, when he and Steve Wozniak were kind of playing around in a garage with various technical devices, he kind of had this idea that he could sell some of these things that Wozniak was coming up with. But that was never the focus. That was never the drive. He really was about innovation. A lot of his creations and a lot of his ideas came from thinking about problems that people didn't realize they had, right? Trying to put together various technologies or streamline processes that people didn't even realize were complicated, because it's really hard for most of us to fathom what life might be like, how drastically something could change with something like a device in our pocket. So what he did as a visionary, that's really what set him apart. Thinking about what Steve Jobs did, right? He wasn't an engineer. He wasn't a coder. He wasn't a retail salesperson. He did not stay in a store and sell devices. He really was this kind of visionary who could put together an idea for something, and then a team that could make it happen.
Well, that's why he's, probably has more entrepreneurs who would call him like their hero or their inspiration than just about anybody that I can think of in our modern day. Maybe all time, like Henry Ford or somebody like that, maybe
Yeah.
has an argument to be made. But the amount of things he has affected with his vision for Apple and the ways that it translated to life, and you started to touch on it there. And it's also one of your lessons that you highlight in the story, is that simplicity is sophistication. And that approach to design has altered like everything about our world, right? You think about like home, interior design, home decorations, and how like the clean lines and the minimalism, it all kind of goes back to Steve Jobs. And so, think about life in the 80s and the late 70s and some of the excesses that were present that had sort of over the last 30, 35 years started to fade away. And this is the way that one person can shape the future, not just their company and make some money around that way, but by being so entirely true to that singular vision. I can understand how it's inspiring to so many entrepreneurs.
And what goes into simplifying something really is complicated, right? You have to know an object, you have to know an idea so thoroughly that you don't just you're bypassing screws when you're putting something together. You're bypassing problems entirely. The closest thing that I could think of as I was kind of going through this, as writers, in the writing industry, there's poetry is kind of the highest, most economical form of writing, and it's I can't dabble in that, but to be able to express something in an incredibly minimalistic way, you have to be able to know that and see what elements of that are incredibly important very early on. And so the idea of simple is sophistication is pretty complicated idea. And so I think people can go to that endlessly too, right? It's just an endless well of inspiration for people.
Well, speaking of this story, I think it checks in at about 1,200 words. So it's a quick read if you haven't already. Check it out. Michael is he is adept in the 10,000, 12,000 word article too. We got him to work fast for this one. So check it out. And the new issue of Success are on success.com. And thank you for joining. I'll be back next time with another edition of Between the Lines. So long, everybody.